The Colony Shale Oil Project. All the material was drilled and shot. The small dots on the haul roads are 50-ton haul trucks like this one. Also notice the front end loader. They have virtually replaced shovels. The earth-moving equipment that creates these massive, useful earthen sculptures has greatly improved over the last 150 years. On December the 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers flew their flyer in North Carolina. 6 years later, in January 1910, Louis Paulin, the French birdman, along with his Farman 3 biplane and an entourage of 35 mechanics, engineers, and workmen, arrived in Denver by rail. Paulin had achieved national fame at the Los Angeles Aerial Show just days before by flying his biplane and achieving a new altitude record, 5,000 feet. On February the 1st, 1910, between 40,000 and 50,000 spectators came to Overland Park Raceway to see Louis Paulin fly his biplane. It was almost dusk when he got his biplane into the air. Spectators saw it bounce down the gravel road, his engine roaring, spitting oil, trailing smoke. He achieved an altitude of between 100 and 300 feet before turning around to land. But surprise! Paulin found that as he rose into the air, the crowd had spilled onto the runway, leaving him no alternative but to buzz over the heads of the startled spectators, make another turn, and land in an open field. On the third day, Paulin achieved an altitude of 20 feet when his biplane began acting up. He crashed into a group of bystanders. 3 people received minor injuries, but Paulin was unhurt. His engine continued running and kept driving his propeller into the ground. Paulin had to jump from the cockpit and turn the engine off by hand. As if that was not enough, after the crash, Paulin discovered the downside of fame, as exuberant fans stole most of the pieces of his broken airplane for souvenirs. Paulin had achieved 2 firsts in Colorado. He was the first to achieve powered flight and the first to crash an airplane. On April the 27th, 1910, Paulin won the London Daily Mail's $50,000 aviation prize by covering 183 miles from London to Manchester in less than 24 hours. He did it in 12 hours. 4 hours and 12 minutes at that time in the air flying. In 1919, the Alexander brothers founded the Alexander Film Company, specializing in intermission advertising films shown at movie theaters. It became the nation's leading supplier of movie ads. It took a huge sales force traveling constantly back and forth across the country to accommodate their sales needs. J. Don Alexander had an idea for buying 40 or 50 airplanes for his salesman. Not even the government was buying that many airplanes in the 1920s, so none of the existing manufacturers would take Mr. Alexander's proposal seriously. The Alexander brothers decided to solve the problem by starting their own aircraft manufacturing company. In 1924, they purchased the designs and assets of the defunct Lundgren Aircraft Company of Topeka, Kansas, moved the Lundgren's remaining biplanes, and set up shop in Denver at 3385 South Broadway as the Alexander Aircraft Company. When they outgrew the South Broadway location, they moved to Colorado Springs. The Alexander Aircraft Company built 893 airplanes between the mid-1920s and 1930. During the years 1928 and 1929, it was the largest aircraft manufacturer in the world, with the capacity to manufacture 8 airplanes per day. At that time, there was approximately 5,000 licensed pilots in the United States. One of their airplanes, the Eagle Rock biplane, first manufactured in 1925 and made famous by early barnstormers, was manufactured in downtown Inglewood and later in Colorado Springs. Charles Lindbergh strongly considered both the Eagle Rock and the Belenga for his historic 1927 New York to Paris flight, but both factories were swamped with production orders. Lindbergh ended up by using the Ryan monoplane, which he named the Spirit of St. Louis. The Alexander Aircraft Company prepared for a major expansion of the airplane market. Much like Henry Ford experienced with the automobile market, they established 33 distributorships and had 143 dealers around the nation. They encouraged municipalities to build airports to keep from being bypassed, as it happened with the railroads. But with the market crash in 1928 and depression, they had to take up bankruptcy and liquidate their assets in 1932. It is estimated that 24 Alexander aircraft are still either flying or on display. One Eagle Rock is presently on display at the Denver International Airport. A view of transportation over our state's history shows how far we have come. In the past, new types of transportation evolved as new propulsion units were perfected. Now we have new capabilities. Within a decade, expect to see autonomous and robotic vehicles on our travelway. In addition, just as jet engines propelled aircraft to a new level of capability, we now have a new power source that uses the power of the sun. Prepare for space travel to the edge of our solar system. These units are at least 6 times more efficient than our present chemical rockets. Transportation's future will reach beyond what the eye can see. Thank you.
Terrific presentation. What a collection of history and photos and knowledge and experience. Bob Lowdermilk.